On this episode of China Uncensored, 10 movie remakes you won't be seeing from Hollywood. Sponsored by a Hong Kong film that Hollywood would never allow. Hi, welcome back to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Hollywood loves remakes. They're seen as less risky investments compared to actually coming up with original ideas. Which explains why there have been 12 different Batman movies and counting. Or take Karate Kid, the beloved 1984 classic that taught the virtues of waxing both on and off. But a few decades pass and it's time to make some more money. So, Sony Pictures decided to do a Karate Kid remake in 2010 that taught the virtues of sucking up to the Chinese regime, because China has the second largest movie market in the world. They did this, for example, by setting the remake in Beijing instead of Los Angeles. And what? Don't you know that everyone practices Kung Fu on the Great Wall? It's only a 2-hour drive from Beijing. Also, can I just say, as someone who does actual Kung Fu every morning, Kung Fu is not the same as karate. But don't worry, it was only called the Karate Kid in the US in order to suck nostalgia dollars from our wallets. In China, the movie was called The Kung Fu Dream. But anyway, Hollywood did what it had to do to reach the Chinese market, even if it meant casting Jackie Chan as the Mr. Miyagi character, seen here beating up children in the courtyard. He then goes on to lecture the kids about why Chinese people shouldn't have freedom. Okay, that was a joke. But since Jackie Chan is now appearing in Communist Party propaganda videos that play before every movie that's shown in China, it's not that far off. But sucking up to the Chinese regime is a relatively new phenomenon in Hollywood. There was a time when movie studios didn't care about the Chinese market. But these days, well, some of those movies will never get Hollywood remakes because it would cost studios access to that precious, precious Chinese market. So here's 10 movies that will not be getting remakes. Number 10, The Mask of FuManchu. There were several films about the evil Fu Manchu, a character created by British author Sax Rohmer. But The Mask of FuManchu is considered the worst/best, depending on how you look at it. Let's see, there's racist slurs.
You hideous yellow monster.
There's the Chinese bad guy played by a white actor. And the whole terrible depiction of Chinese people in general.
Conquer and breed! Kill the white man and take his women!
Even during its original release in 1932, the Chinese government launched a formal complaint through its US embassy. Not that Hollywood cared at the time. They were too busy making movies for the German market. Number 9, Macau. When this movie was released in 1952, Macau was still a Portuguese territory. And it was no stranger to gambling, prostitution, and all the exciting corruption that goes along with it. Just like today under Chinese rule. But now, of course, Macau's dark underbelly is more embarrassing since it's frequented by corrupt Chinese political and business leaders laundering their ill-gotten gains. So this one's probably not getting remade. Number 8, The Sand Pebbles. This film takes place on the Yangtze River in China in 1926. It involves an American crew aboard the fictional USS Pablo. But during its filming in the early 1960s, Mao Zedong was busy killing millions of people, and foreigners weren't exactly welcomed in China. So it was filmed mainly in Hong Kong and Taiwan. It was nominated for 8 Oscars, including Best Actor for Steve McQueen. But despite being a great film, its depiction of American gunboat diplomacy of the era means this story will never be remade by Hollywood. Number 7, Year of the Dragon. This film was about a New York City detective fighting gangsters in Chinatown. Some loved it, some hated it. But objectively, it flopped, losing millions of dollars in theaters. But that's not why Year of the Dragon won't be remade by Hollywood. It's because of complaints from the Chinese community about racial slurs and the general depiction of Chinese people as thugs, criminals, and triads. Sure, there are triad movies made by Hong Kong directors, but the Chinese regime draws the line at foreigners airing their dirty laundry. Literally. I mean, since they censored a scene in Mission Impossible 3 when Tom Cruise walked past laundry hanging from balconies in Shanghai. Number 6, Big Trouble in Little China. The Chinatown-themed movie also flopped when it was released, but it has since become a cult classic. Sure, there was some talk about a remake a few years ago, starring The Rock. But I doubt that's going to happen. Is it because of China's current box office clout and Hollywood's aversion to offending Beijing? Nah. 2 words: Chinese wizards. Although now that I think of it, if anyone could defeat Chinese wizards to get the movie made, it would be The Rock. But even The Rock couldn't get this movie shown in China. Chinese villains and making fun of Chinese culture is a total non-starter, regardless of the intentional buffoonery. I don't know if you've noticed, but the Chinese Communist Party doesn't exactly have a sense of humor. Number 5, The Last Emperor. This film won all 9 Oscars it was nominated for and pulled in $109 million at the global box office. It was based on the life of Pu Yi, the boy who became emperor of the Qing dynasty at age 3 and died during the Communist Party's Cultural Revolution. Amazingly, the production got the official blessing of the Chinese government at the time. But this was in the mid-1980s, when China seemed to be reforming and its leaders were craving international recognition. The Tiananmen Square massacre a couple years later pretty much erased all those efforts. A remake of this story in today's hypersensitive Chinese political environment would be problematic, because despite Pu Yi's eventual loyalty to the Communist Party, the party treated him pretty badly, and no one wants embarrassing things like the truth to come out. Number 4, Red Corner. In this film, an American businessman visits Beijing and is blackmailed for murder by corrupt Chinese businessmen and government officials. It's critical of the Chinese government, plus it reinforces some of the sexist Western stereotypes about Chinese women. This is also one of the films that got Richard Gere banned from most Hollywood productions, although his remarks at the 1993 Oscars supporting human rights and the Dalai Lama had already put him on many studios' blacklists. In Hollywood, you're free to criticize the US government all you want, but criticizing the Chinese Communist Party is a no-go. That's why Hollywood studios are hesitant to cast Richard Gere in any roles these days. They know that it will make it hard for them to get their films shown in China. Number 3, 7 Years in Tibet. This film is based on a true story. It stars Brad Pitt as a heroic, sexy Nazi? Well, he was Austrian, and he was cleared of any crimes. But anyway, he was trying to climb a mountain in the Himalayas when World War II started, and he spent pretty much the entire war in a British POW camp in India until he escaped to Tibet in 1944. Anyway, Brad Pitt, his character, meets the Dalai Lama and a lasting friendship ensues. But the important part here is that it shows the CCP's benevolent liberation of Tibet as more of a brutal invasion. That is way too accurate for Hollywood. So yeah, this film is not going to get remade anytime soon. Number 2, Hun Doon. Another Tibet-related film released in the same year. This one tracks 20-plus years of the Dalai Lama's life, from childhood through when he flees Tibet after the CCP's liberation, where he was liberated from his throne and very nearly liberated from his life. This one will also forever be banned in China and therefore Hollywood. And number 1, Spy Game. A-listers Robert Redford and Brad Pitt ensured box office success for this spy thriller. But when your third act climax involves a US Navy SEAL team landing on Chinese soil to extract 2 American political prisoners held by the People's Liberation Army, you know you'll have problems getting the film into Chinese theaters. But of course, back in 2001, China's box office was negligible, so that wasn't a major factor for Universal Pictures. If Spy Game were remade today, the third act would probably involve North Korea, like that terrible, terrible remake of Red Dawn. It was terrible. Now, I'm not saying Hollywood is bad. I'm just saying it's pure evil and feeds on the souls of innocent children. But no judgment here. Unfortunately, Hollywood has so much power that it's hard for smaller movies to get made, even if they're potentially really, really awesome. Which brings me to an indie film that both the Chinese Communist Party and Hollywood will censor, The Last Days of Hong Kong. The producer and I worked together to bring you this episode. Last Days is a political thriller about a maverick private detective who uncovers a plot that threatens the lives of all Hong Kongers. And it takes place on the eve of Hong Kong's complete turnover to Chinese communist rule in the year 2047. Not only will this film anger the Communist Party, but it will also feature actors and artists who've been blacklisted in China. So it's really not getting made by Hollywood. And that's why it needs your support. Click the link below or here in this box to watch the teaser. They've just launched a Kickstarter campaign, and if you can help them raise 500,000 Hong Kong dollars, which is about 64,000 US dollars, by November 17th, it'll actually get made. Thanks for watching this episode of China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time. Click the box and help make a movie.